The sound of the ambulance siren was the last thing I heard before my world went silent. Not the silence of peace, but the hollow, ringing void of a heart that had just been shattered. I was standing in my kitchen, the phone still warm in my hand, staring at the screen in utter, breath-stealing horror. 3 words were burning on the display, sent to my neighbor, Eleanor, a woman whose name I barely knew beyond a polite wave in the driveway. They were words meant for a ghost, for a love I had lost 6 months ago, a love I was only now, foolishly, trying to reach out to again. And in a moment of pathetic, cosmic clumsiness, I had sent them to the wrong person. My entire world narrowed to the cold tile floor beneath my feet and the pulsing dread that was already spreading through my veins like poison. This wasn't just embarrassment, it was a violation of the sacred, a joke played by a universe that had already taken everything from me. And then, 5 minutes later, a sharp, insistent knock echoed through my silent house. Before I continue, if you believe in the power of second chances and the kindness of strangers, please hit that like button, share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel for more tales of the human heart. Your support helps us share these stories that remind us we are not alone. My name is Benjamin, and I had become a master of the quiet catastrophe. After losing my wife, Clara, to a sudden and aggressive illness, I had retreated into a world of gray. My life had shrunk to the 4 walls of this house, a place that now felt more like a mausoleum than a home. The mornings were the worst. I'd wake up, and for a blissful, disoriented second, I'd forget. Then the crushing weight of reality would slam into my chest, and I'd spend the next hour just trying to breathe. My job as a graphic designer, once a passion, was now a remote, lifeless task I performed from my home office, the vibrant colors on my screen mocking the monochrome of my existence. My only contact with the outside world was the occasional nod to Eleanor across the fence, or the sight of her tending to her beautiful, chaotic garden, a riot of color that seemed to defy the very grief I was drowning in. She was a woman of a certain age, with kind eyes and a serene smile that never seemed to falter. I knew nothing of her life, her losses, her joys. She was just the neighbor, a figure in the periphery of my solitary existence. The text was a moment of pure, nostalgic weakness. I had been scrolling through old photos on my phone, a dangerous pastime I had sworn off. I had found a picture of Clara laughing, her head thrown back, the sunlight catching the streaks of gold in her hair. The memory was so potent, so painfully beautiful, that I felt a desperate, foolish need to connect with her. I opened my messaging app, my thumbs trembling, and typed the words that had been our private joke, a phrase she'd whisper to me when I was feeling low. "I've been thinking about you all day. I wish you were here. I need you, you know that?" "Say that again." I had no intention of sending it. It was a catharsis, a private moment of conversation with her memory. But my thumb, slick with a solitary tear, had slipped. The message disappeared from the text field and I was left staring at the words delivered. My heart lurched. I looked at the recipient. It wasn't Clara's name. It was Eleanor. My blood ran cold. I wanted to rip the phone in half, to take the words back from the digital ether. I stared at the screen, praying for a glitch, for a technological miracle. The seconds ticked by like hours. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead, and a wave of nausea washed over me. This wasn't just an awkward social faux pas, it felt like a betrayal. I had just shared a piece of my most intimate grief with a stranger. My mind raced, concocting scenarios of humiliation. She would show the text to her friends. She would think I was a creep, a lonely, pathetic man with no boundaries. My carefully constructed wall of isolation was crumbling, and I was powerless to stop it. I was just about to throw my phone across the room in a fit of desperate frustration when the knock came. It wasn't a gentle, hesitant tap. It was a firm, confident, 3-part knock that demanded a response. My breath hitched. My eyes darted to the door, and a fresh wave of panic flooded my system. I could see her silhouette through the frosted glass. She was wearing her gardening hat. Oh God! She was here to confront me. To demand an explanation. What could I possibly say? "Sorry, I was just having a mental breakdown and accidentally texted you my dead wife's pet name?" It was mortifying. My feet felt like they were encased in cement as I shuffled towards the door, each step a surrender to the inevitable humiliation. I unlocked the deadbolt, my hand shaking. The knob felt cold and unyielding, a final barrier between me and the judgment I was sure was waiting on the other side. With a deep, shuddering breath, I opened the door. There she was, Eleanor, her face framed by the soft morning light. Her eyes, however, weren't filled with anger or suspicion. They were filled with something I hadn't seen directed at me in a very long time, understanding. A soft, gentle smile touched her lips, and before I could stammer out an apology, she spoke. Her voice was calm, like the water in a still pond, and it seemed to cut through the cacophony of dread in my head. "Say that again," she said, her voice quiet but clear, repeating the last line of my accidental text. The words hung in the air between us. I was frozen, my mouth agape. She reached out, her hand resting gently on my arm, a simple touch that felt both alien and deeply comforting. "No," she continued, her voice unwavering, "I don't mean the words. I mean the feeling. The raw, vulnerable, aching feeling behind them. It's been a long time since I've seen it in anyone, and even longer since I felt it myself. Don't apologize, Benjamin. Please." The tears I had been holding back for so long finally broke through the dam. They weren't tears of joy, but of a profound, undeniable relief. The shame that had been suffocating me began to loosen its grip. Eleanor guided me to sit on the porch steps, her presence a quiet anchor in the storm. She didn't pry. She didn't offer empty platitudes. Instead, she told me her own story. She spoke of her husband, Arthur, a man who had been a part of her for over 40 years before a stroke had stolen him away. She told me about the silence that had filled her house, the weight of his absence that was like a physical presence she carried with her everywhere. She spoke of her own garden, telling me that it was a form of therapy. In the quiet act of planting and nurturing, she was reminding herself that life still had to bloom, that new beauty could emerge from the earth, even after the coldest winter. Her words were simple, but they carried a wisdom that came only from surviving the impossible. It was in that moment, sitting on my dusty porch steps in the quiet of the morning, that my world began to change. It wasn't a dramatic shift, but a slow, gentle unfurling. Eleanor taught me that grief wasn't a pit to be crawled out of, but a landscape to be traversed. She showed me that in the act of sharing our deepest wounds, we don't bleed out, we find common ground. We started having coffee together every morning on her porch, surrounded by her flowers. I found myself telling her about Clara, not just the story of her death, but the story of her life. I told her about our first date, the way she would sing in the shower, her terrible cooking, and her even more terrible jokes. Sharing these memories didn't feel like a betrayal, it felt like a celebration. I was giving Clara a new life, a new audience, through the kindness and understanding of a neighbor who had become a friend. Slowly, I started to emerge from my self-imposed prison. I reconnected with old friends, the ones I had pushed away. I started to see the world in color again, just like Eleanor had done in her garden. The work I was doing began to feel meaningful again. The ache of losing Clara was still there, a deep and constant hum beneath the surface of my life. But it was no longer a scream. It had become a quiet, familiar presence, a part of who I was. I understood that moving on didn't mean forgetting her, it meant learning to carry her with me into the future, to find a way to be happy even with a part of my heart forever missing. My neighbor, who was once a stranger, had shown me that sometimes, the most profound salvation can come from the most unexpected mistakes. If this story touched your heart, please, take a moment to share it. Leave a comment below and tell us if you have ever had a moment where a stranger's kindness changed your life. We read every single comment, and your stories inspire us just as much. Please like, share, and subscribe so you never miss a story that might just make you feel a little less alone in this big, beautiful, and sometimes heartbreaking world. That accidental text, a moment of pure, devastating pain, became the catalyst for my healing. It taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, but a bridge to connect us. It showed me that even in the depths of our own despair, we have the power to reach out and touch another's soul, and that the universe, in its mysterious way, often provides the balm we need from the most unlikely of sources. The last words of that accidental text became a mantra for a new beginning. When Eleanor had said it back to me, it was a challenge, a call to action. It wasn't about a lost love anymore. It was about finding the courage to say it again, to myself, to the world. To say that I was ready to live, to love, and to allow myself to be happy again. And so, I did. I said it again, not in a text, but in the way I started to live my life. I said it to the new sunrise, to the blooming flowers in Eleanor's garden, and to the quiet, resilient hope that was finally finding its way back into my heart.